And look, if I'm being honest, that for me is Liverpool 1, Manchester City 1. The last time that Klopp and Guardiola are going to be going up against each other in the Premier League. And honestly, what a fitting end. This was an absolute barnstormer of a game. Sometimes you hype these games up and sometimes they disappoint. But this was absolutely not the case. There was so much to talk about in this game. We've got to talk about the lineups. We've got to talk about the way the two teams set up. The goals, the penalty decision right at the end. The non-penalty decision, I should maybe say. Well, should the referee have given it? Did VAR bottle it? There's so much to talk about. And there are a couple of surprises for Liverpool in particular. I think the fact that Harvey Elliott started right wing was a bit of a surprise. Liverpool fans were maybe hoping that Mohamed Salah would be fit. I think the fact that Jurgen Klopp was starting centre back, I think maybe a lot of people expected Joe Gomez to be centre back and Andy Robertson at left back. But in all honesty, I think they did a fantastic job on the day. And for Manchester City, I think it was the lineup you pretty much expected. Maybe the fact that there was no Ruben Diaz. I have seen some City fans say that he hasn't had the best of seasons and that Akanji with his pace was a little bit better option for this game. And I think, he played a pretty decent game. But all in all, I think Manchester City dominated the first 10 minutes, if we're being honest. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they were dominating in the middle of the park. And if we talk about this midfield here, this 4 versus 3, the 4 of John Stones, Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne, and Bernardo Silva versus the 3 of Endo, McAllister, and Subasic for Liverpool. That's where they were dominating in the early stages of the game. And what you'd have is, you'd have Núñez pressing from one side, and if Man City normally reverting to their back 3, and you'd have Akanji on the ball. What would happen is, if Núñez was pressing from one side, what would happen is the midfielder who was deepest on that side would drop. So in this case, Rodri, and then Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai were pressing so high up on John Stones and Rodri that anytime they dropped, that they had to go with them, which left all this acres of space for Kevin De Bruyne, for Akanji to pass into, and then Endo would be stuck, because then he'd be like, do I go with Silva, do I go with Kevin De Bruyne, what do I do? And Akanji would then play the ball to Kevin De Bruyne, and then Phil Foden would link up play, and then they get the ball into Haaland. And I think they caused Liverpool some real trouble in the first 10 minutes of the game. And obviously this also happened on the other side as well. If I quickly demonstrate that for you as well, I think we'll put Phil Foden back there, Rodri there. And let's say Darwin Núñez started to press from the other side of Akanji. What would happen is John Stones would drop in deep, and then Dominic Szoboszlai would press him, and then it would free up Bernardo Silva, and that ball again would be there to one of the more attacking midfielders. He'd link up with his wide man, in this case Julian Alvarez, and we'll get on to Alvarez, because I think he had a okay game, but I think he could have done better in this game. And then he would try and link up with Alvarez and try to get the ball to Haaland as well. So Man City in the first time it's absolutely dominated. But what did Liverpool do to counteract that? Well, they started up building up the back and getting control of the ball. They started off with trying to build up with 3 at the back, and sometimes they'd use Caoimhin Kelleher as one of the defenders because they were being so pressed up so high. And it would be fine because Gerald Kwanzaa would have the ball, Virgil van Dijk would have the ball, Kelleher would have the ball, and they were really good at it. But the other thing they did was that they pushed Conor Bradley all the way up, which meant that there were 2 versus 1 against Ake. So Harvey Elliott would go into midfield, Alexis McAllister would drop, the back 3 would all move around, and Joe Gomez would tuck in as well to form the back 3. Endo would then move on to Kevin De Bruyne, and then they would actually push John Stones back. And what this meant was that all of a sudden there was a 4 versus 3 for Liverpool. And the key thing they did was they dropped John Stones back. They made him have to go back because Darwin Núñez was continually making runs in behind through this channel here, through the channel here, and also through the channel between Akanji and Walker. He was a menace. He was offside so many times in this game. It was incredibly frustrating. But by doing so, he pushed John Stones further back, which is what they needed to do. Get him out of midfield. Then it became a 3 versus 3 for Liverpool. But then it became a 4 versus 3 because Harvey Elliott would go into the midfield as well. And I think Rodri really struggled in this game after the first 10 minutes, because what happened was Liverpool would play the ball and they'd pretty much do alright. Phil Foden would push in, Alvarez would push in, but then Endo and McAllister would get the ball, and they would actually do the reverse of what Man City was trying to do. Anytime Endo would drop in there, he'd get the ball, spin to Kevin De Bruyne, or Joe Gomez would pass it straight to Szoboszlai, or he'd get the ball to Elliott. And then once these two had the ball, Rodri was just stuck in no man's land, because he then either had to press Szoboszlai, which would leave space over on this side for Conor Bradley to go, or Harvey Elliott, or he had to press Harvey Elliott and that would leave space for Dominic Szoboszlai or Luis Diaz. And Luis Diaz, who had a fantastic game against Kyle Walker, and I think it's moment of the season, arguably, you could talk about, in the fact that Diaz had the ball on the left-hand side in the second half, and he took on Rodri and Walker and came away with a corner. Absolutely phenomenal. But despite the fact that Liverpool got themselves back into the game in that first half, it was actually Manchester City who took the early lead. And let's talk about that corner, because I think it was really well worked from City and Kevin De Bruyne. And here you have the corner before Kevin De Bruyne swings the ball in. And if you think about it, you've actually got 8 Liverpool players in the box, 9 if you include Harvey Elliott at the top as well, but I'm not really going to, because he's got a man on the edge of the box he's marking. But 8 Liverpool players versus 5 Manchester City. And I think themselves, they should be absolutely fine if you think about the height in there as well. But as you can see, as Kevin De Bruyne is lining it up, Nathan Ake and Alexis McAllister, obviously they're at the end there. McAllister needs to be a bit stronger. Obviously that's easy to say in hindsight, but you think to yourself, even if McAllister does get pushed out the way, he's going to be absolutely fine. But then what happens is Kevin De Bruyne, obviously the magician that he is, I think it's a pretty straightforward ball, if I'm being honest, to the near post. I think we all know that Kevin De Bruyne is capable of making that kind of pass. But then what happens is Ake pushes McAllister out the way, John Stones gets ahead of Darwin Núñez, and I think at this point you think to yourself, Núñez was already wrong side of John Stones beforehand, but now he's got no chance of getting there. And as you can see Joe Gomez, you can see Weaven Kelleher, you can see Virgil van Dijk in the middle. Everyone realizes, oh crap, that ball is not going into the air where we think it's going to go into the middle. It's going to the near post, and that's, by that point, it's already too late. And the thing that's most noteworthy is the fact that no Man City player, apart from John Stones, actually makes a run towards the ball, which means that all the Liverpool players are just stood there standing because they know their man is not going to be the one to get there, apart from Darwin Núñez, who needs to make that run, but by the time he makes it, it's far too late. And I think it's a very well-worked goal by Manchester City. I think it's a very poor one to concede for Liverpool. I think maybe if you're being incredibly critical, you could maybe say Mikel should do better there from point blank. But I think, he gets an arm to it. There's nothing much he can do. And I think fair play to Man City to go a goal up. But the only thing is, did Man City take their foot off the pedal at just the wrong time? I remember Kyle Walker going to pick up a throw and he was walking there. He was slowing the game down. Liverpool fans were getting onto him for it. I just thought to myself, if you go ahead and you score a second one, then it almost certainly puts the game to bed at that point. I think Liverpool did have chances in the second half. They could have gone for it. But I think the confidence boost it would have given Man City players and the confidence hit it would have given to the Liverpool and the Anfield crowd. I did think Man City missed an opportunity by slowing the game down there and letting Liverpool, build a momentum, getting back into it, because that's exactly what happened. And Liverpool come out in the second half and they go at Man City just like they did in the first. And I think to yourself, the second half, stay calm, Man City. But then Nathan Ake, who I think has been one of Man City's best defenders this season, makes a bit of a blunder here. He doesn't put enough on the back pass for Ederson to get to, and ultimately leads to Liverpool winning the penalty. But I think what's most interesting here is the fact that Man City are in a very, very safe and stable position. There's no need to panic. However, I think this screenshot perfectly shows you just the little change that's made, and it's the fact that John Stones, look at his stride length. His feet are very close together. But look at Darwin Núñez. He knows where that pass is going. He's anticipating it, and he is sprinting. You can see there how wide his right and left leg are from each other. He's going for that ball, and of course he gets there, which obviously leads to the penalty for Liverpool. And I think to myself, a yellow card was obviously fine. I don't think a red card was needed there. Darwin is going away from the ball. It's at the edge of the area. But I think to myself, I don't think he expects the pass to be light. I think he expects Nathan Ake to pass it to him, fairly comfortably. He doesn't anticipate the fact that Darwin Núñez is going to charge at him. I think, it's a bad mistake to make, and one that inevitably leads to Ederson being taken off. I don't think Liverpool capitalised on that as much as they could have. I did think that Ortega, when he came on, did have it pretty much his own way. But I think fantastic penalty by Alexis McAllister, despite the fact that VAR were reviewing the penalty for about 2.5 minutes. I think Liverpool thoroughly deserved it at that point. And then Jurgen Klopp went ahead and made some changes in the second half. And I think, they were changes we all pretty much expected. I think the fact that Andy Robertson came on, Conor Bradley went off, and then Joe Gomez came over to the right-hand side. And then the fact that obviously Mo Salah came on, Dominic Szoboszlai came off. I think he's only just returned back from his injury, so I don't think he's fit to start the whole 90. But then Mo Salah came on as well. And then I did think to myself, right, this at the moment in time where Liverpool can really capitalise. If Liverpool can still be in the game and then they bring on Mo Salah, then they've got a real chance. Ultimately, I think Salah was a bit rushed in this game. However, what it did lead to, and I want to show you, is the average positions changing massively, because what happened was Joe Gomez started inverting into the midfield. Alexis McAllister pushed on as well. Harvey Elliott was still there. And they still had the control. They still had the 4 in midfield compared to Man City's 3 because Liverpool would keep on pushing back John Stones. And then Mo Salah coming on as well. It had another issue for Man City to worry about. Ake couldn't handle him on his own because it is obviously Mo Salah, even when he's not having a great day. And so they were worried about that. I think Luis Diaz, again, was just still on Kyle Walker, not letting him get anywhere. And I think they absolutely did Man City in this midfield, which is not something you'd normally say. But then look at what happens to the Liverpool's average positions when they do make those substitutes. Because yes, they come on, they're going to be a bit more attacking. But not only that, they're way more attacking. Look at Conor Bradley 84, Darwin Núñez 9, and Dominic Szoboszlai 8, where they normally would be. But then look at where the Liverpool substitutes end up there. They're all ending up much further than they were originally. Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, and I think the one that's most noticeable is Andy Robertson because of how high he was playing in this game when he did come on. Not only did it provide defensive support, but he did also allow him to go forward. He was whipping and crosses into the box, and then Kyle Walker then had Andy Robertson to deal with and Luis Diaz inside of him. It made his job even more difficult, and then Mo Salah obviously being the furthest forward. I do think though the Liverpool missed a little bit of a trick by not keeping Núñez on. I think the link up between Núñez and Salah, it was only a matter of time before they wouldn't get through. And I did think to myself that Cody Gakpo didn't quite take the game by the scruff of the neck as he should have. But I do have to say that Liverpool, despite the fact that, whatever we're going to talk about with the penalty which is coming up, I do think that, Luis Diaz could have finished this game on his own. He definitely had the chances, and another day he would have finished the chances. And I think Pep Guardiola had to respond in some sort of way. I think the fact that he didn't start Jeremy Doku for Julian Alvarez at the beginning was a bit of a mistake. And I don't think a lot of people talk about this apart from City fans. It's the fact that Jack Grealish is a massive, massive miss for them. Yes, they got Alvarez who can play on the left. Yes, they got Jeremy Doku. But I think in this game, both defensively and offensively, Jack Grealish would have been the perfect fit for Man City. He would have built up play a lot better than Doku and Alvarez did. He would have defensively been a lot more solid and would have helped Man City, when Liverpool were attacking with Conor Bradley down their right. I thought to myself that he's missed and no one talks about him as much. But I think Kevin De Bruyne, was he taken off and was the right thing? I think it was, to be fair. I mean, you can see here, you can see 17, Kevin De Bruyne. And I think, he was being cut off from the game. Liverpool's midfield were just all over Man City's midfield. Not something you say often. But once Kovacic came onto the pitch, did he get more of a grasp on the midfield? Was he dropping in deeper? I think he was. And if you click on show substitutions here, see where Kovacic ends up. He ends up next to Bernardo Silva. And then John Stones, with that 4 in that midfield, Man City were able to control the game a lot better than they were with Kevin De Bruyne on the pitch. And I think Kevin, he can be a bit disappointed with the fact that he did come off. The greatest players want to be playing in the biggest games for the whole 90. But I do think to myself, with the injuries he's had so far this season and the fact that he's getting isolated in this game, it was the right decision. And I don't think he can have too many complaints. And then finally, did Liverpool deserve a penalty? Did VAR bottle it? And I'm recording this the day after the game because I wanted to make sure that I still thought the same thing that I did yesterday. And if I'm being honest, I still think that's a penalty. I've chosen a very specific still here because obviously Jeremy Doku does get a tad bit of the ball. And obviously this one shows the fact that he's making contact, which makes it more obvious. But I do think it was a difficult one for maybe potentially the referee to see. But I think the fact that VAR didn't give the penalty, I just think to myself, get rid of VAR at this point. Because I just think if the foot hits Alexis McAllister in the chest, what high bar do you need? I think it's just a mistake. I think it is just, is it a penalty? Yes, give the penalty. If it's not, it's not. And you keep it as that. But I think this was obvious. I think the referee should have given it. And if not, VAR should have overturned it. And I think going forward in the title race, this could be a massive, massive decision. A massive, massive moment. Who knows? This could be the equivalent of the John Stones clearing the ball off the line from a few years ago. This could be the still that we use in a few years from now. I think to myself, it's a penalty. And if you disagree, that's absolutely fine. But I just think for me, this was a penalty.